Hey you guys, Trey Vittetoe here. Today I want to talk about the vocal chain that I use in my sessions. And I think it's best if I give a little history of it so you know why I use what I use, because it is a bit unorthodox. So, several years back when I was working a lot with Ted Bruner, Ted was a guy that really created the vocal chain or the sound that I go for. So, Ted was working in Pro Tools. He wasn't a trained engineer, he was a producer, songwriter. And he just started recording in Pro Tools and figuring it out on his own. And I'm sure when he first started tracking vocals, he just started applying plugins to the chain, trying to find something that sounded good. So when engineers would come in and they would see what he did, I should say initially when they would hear what he did, they would go, wow, your vocals sound amazing. And then the very same engineers that were trained guys and knew what they were doing, as soon as they would look at the vocal chain, they would start messing with it. They would start changing things because it looked so unorthodox and it made so little sense. I'm sure in the great scheme of things, it wasn't a very efficient vocal chain. But to give you an idea of how good it sounded, we would track people like Katy Perry or Jesse James on songs that we had done with them. And all of a sudden, the label would be calling back a few weeks later going, you know, the sound you guys have on these vocals is so amazing. What are you doing? And can we send the artist back into your studio and track some of the vocals we have for other songs? And it got to the point where producers around town were calling Ted and going, hey, what's going on? What are you doing with those vocals? So what was Ted doing with the vocal? Well, I would say that of all the things in the chain that were sort of unique, the most unique thing was a plugin called Echo Farm. Echo Farm was a plugin that was, at the time, it was Pro Tools TDM only, maybe still. But it was modeled, I think the patch that he used was modeled after an old Echoplex. And it just, when he put it in the chain, beyond the delays, the plugin was giving the vocal a certain tone that really cut through the mixes in a really great way. It was compressed. It had a little grit to it. It definitely had a lot of high mids presence to it. It had a very radio-friendly tone. And so when Ted would put that in, and he had a compressor, he'd run 1176 in the chain, he would put the Echo Farm in. Once he put the Echo Farm in, he would have to carve the EQ back out because some of the highs were a little bit too much and we lose some of the lows. And when he finished EQing, basically kind of correcting some of the EQ challenges that were coming from the Echo Farm, the result was just really very present. It had such a great warm tone. The vocal just felt like it was right in your face. So whenever I would want to track vocals, I would do my tracks here in my studio, but then I would go down to Universal where we had this set up, and I would use the same vocal chain that Ted was using. I got tired of that, though, after a few years. I wanted to start recording vocals here. Didn't want to be reliant on going down there all the time. So the question was, how do I create that same chain here? Because the key plugin, the Echo Farm, was only a Pro Tools TDM plugin. So for about 2 years, I was on a quest, and I tried a lot of different things. The most obvious thing I tried was an Echoplex type of plugin. I used a lot of Universal Audio plugins, and they have a great Echoplex emulation. And I stuck it in the chain, and it in no way sounded like what we had with the Echo Farm. It was a losing battle for about 2 years. And then one day, by accident, I found a little plugin that is native to Cubase that I realized was doing exactly what I loved from the Echo Farm. And in fact, I may feel today like it even does it a little bit better. So I want to show you what my chain is. I would say that my unorthodox vocal chain doesn't look very nice, but it does sound great in my humble opinion. And I do have people come into my studio regularly who will be tracking vocals. As soon as they hear their voice through it, they go, oh, wow, well, that already sounds fantastic. And I just really chalk it up to Ted Bruner, who created this sound, and I just really found a way to model it within Cubase. So enough of that. Let me show you what I do. This is a song called Medicine. It's by an artist named Sebastian Olzanski. Sebastian came in with Aaron Smith and another writer, Jackson Wise, and we wrote this song together, and I really like it a lot. So here you go.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home. Phone is ringing, you might be calling. Is your heart pounding, cause mine is flying. Do you feel me, do you feel me? If you knew what's good for you, I'd be the first on your list. If you knew what's good for you, I'd be the one you miss.
So the first thing I want to do is play you the vocal completely dry as we tracked it.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home. Phone is ringing, you might be calling. Is your heart pounding, cause mine is flying. Do you feel me, do you feel me?
So I did run a little bit of an EQ with this Neve 1073, and I just hit a little bit at 48K, and I rolled the high in just a little bit just to give some presence out there in the vocal and give it a little sparkle on the top. So now here's the sound again in the chain.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home. Phone is ringing, you might be calling. Is your heart pounding, cause mine is flying.
Okay, cool. First thing I have in my chain is an 1176, and in this case I have all buttons in, so it's slammed. It is giving me a great sort of flat, sort of compressed, very out front sound. All right, so let me show you what I think is the sort of magic tool that I found. This is the one that, again, it's a native plugin for Cubase. Really, it's a pretty simple plugin. It's called the Dual Filter. It's got a frequency knob and it's got a resonance knob. So again, just a very basic little filter. And what I find is that right around the 40 to 48, and I don't even know what this is measured in, but it's the 40 to 48 range on this particular plugin. Gives me just the right high mids that I like a lot. And again, I'll back the resonance off. Sometimes I'll tailor it a little bit based on the vocal, but let me show you what it does without it. Let me pull these out, and I'll show you what's happening with the dual filter by itself. So this is with it out.
Show is over, lights are out.
That's just the 1176.
Mr. Driver, take me home.
Now with the dual filter.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home.
Okay, so it gives it kind of a radio or telephone effect, right? It's pretty thin, but very radio, and if you really listen to it closely, it's got this compressed tonality, it's got a little grit to it.
It's over, lights are out.
It's just cuts
Mr.
through.
Driver, take me home.
What I do now is I bring this plugin. This is just an audio track plugin from Waves, but you can use any EQ. I have a little compression on it. I'm bringing the low end back up here. I'm cutting quite a bit of the highs.
Show is over, lights are out. Show is over, lights are out.
So it warms it up on the low end, cuts a little bit of the high frequency out. But now I hit it just a little bit more on the low end with this plugin, so it really warms it up without.
Show is over, lights are out.
With TransX.
Show is over, lights are out.
A little bit more warmth on that. Everything else I do is just to squeeze it down a little bit more, give it a little more crush.
Show is over, lights are out.
In.
Show is over, lights are out.
And then the final plugin, of course, is just a de-esser.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home.
And again, it's actually doing several things. It's not just covering the S's. It's covering some of the other plosives and things in there. So that's my plugin chain. Again, very unorthodox. I have plugins that I'm creating a certain sound, and then I'm following it with plugins that are basically correcting some of the problems from the other plugins. But I truly believe that the final result is pretty amazing.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home. Phone is ringing, you might be calling. Is your heart pounding, cause mine is flying. Do you feel me, do you feel me?
And the last thing I will mention is you see all along I've had this EQ. This is something I tailor per vocal. Some vocals I'll feel like I've got a lot of low in it, and I may pull some of that back. I pulled a little bit of the mid-range here, right around 596, just a shade. And I've also a little tiny bit of highs there, about 2 dB of highs up here. But there you go. I don't always use a lot of verbs on my vocals. I like to use a lot of delays. I run an echo set at an eighth note, and I run another one set at a quarter note. You're noticing I run the treble a little bright. I roll off the bass a little bit here. If you're familiar with the Echoplex plugin by UA, it is mono. So what I do after the tape echo, the Echoplex, I run this Mondo Mod plugin, which is essentially gives it just a little panning action. And you'll see that if you look at the way this swings, I've got the panning pretty slow.
Show is over, lights are out. Mr. Driver, take me home. Phone is ringing, you might be calling. Is your heart pounding, cause mine is flying. Do you feel me, do you feel me?
So there you go. I didn't come into this game as an engineer. I came into this game as a musician and then a producer. I essentially bypassed the training part of this. So again, I would imagine that if you looked at one of my sessions, a pro engineer guy would go, yeah, there's a lot of unorthodox things you do there. But what does it really matter if it sounds cool? If it's all about the sound. And that's what I'm fighting for. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. For those of you who are Cubase users, I highly recommend you try the dual filter plugin. I have vocals come into my studio every day from expensive mics to cheap mics. People are sending me sessions they want me to work on. And there's something about the way that plugin chain works that I just don't have a problem getting a pretty decent vocal sound as long as they send me a generally clean vocal. I just feel like there's something about that chain that just works. You have to tailor the settings to the project, but there's no question in my mind that if you do it correctly, you're going to get a great result. All right, you guys, until next time.